Hello, konnichiwa, this is Setsuna, and today we'll be taking a look at the Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp trailer footage from the E3 livestream to come up with some theories as to the scenarios that we might see in the game. This video will be separated into a few parts for many reasons, but the main one being that there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about regarding this game, and I can't fit it all into one video without it being too overwhelming. So in this part, I'll be talking about my theories for individual character interactions or events from the screenshots that we've seen in the English trailer. But you might be thinking, we hardly even have 1 minute of content to look at, and the game seems pretty cut and dry like the bonus mode from V3, so what is there to theorize? Well, yes, you are correct, but that doesn't mean that I can't try to theorize about the interactions that the characters might have with one another. This video is also going to be a bit of a mess since I kind of just compiled all of my random first impression theories, so I may go back later on and go into more detail in later videos. But this video is just going to be a fun video for all of us Dangan fans to start making theories, so let's get started. What we know about the game so far is that it'll basically be just like the Ultimate Talent Development Plan from V3, but with more interactions, scenarios, sprites, and a whole new setting that probably won't be Hope's Peak Academy. And speaking of V3, this video will include some spoilers for all previous Danganronpa games, so if you haven't played those, then what are you doing? Play those first and then come back to this video so we can theorize together. From the title art and some of the CGs, we can guess that it will take place on an island, aka Jabberwock Island, as it mentions in the description. Speaking of the description, I'll just read it out from the official Spike Chunsoft website for more context on what this game is about. With an all-star dream lineup of characters from each Danganronpa game, gather hope fragments at a tropical resort. Explore Jabberwock Island and develop your Dangan characters. Gather money through battle and upgrade your equipment. Then defeat bosses and move on to the next island. So, from that description, we know that they use hope fragments instead of friendship fragments, which means that the story might have some sort of rehabilitation theme at the end of the game, just like SDR2. Because in that game, they had to collect a certain amount of hope fragments in order to get out of the simulation. I wouldn't put it past Danganronpa to have a seemingly happy and fun game, and then twist it to remind you of the sad stuff that happened in the previous games. I just can't imagine that they'll make an entire game without having some sort of depressing scene. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the route that you take with a certain character in HDRS, that character will be reminded of what their fate actually was in the main games. For example, spoilers again for V3. If the survivors for V3 try to use the Neo World program to remember their deceased classmates and have some fun with them, but at the end of the fun time, aka the end of this game, they're reminded of the reality where all but 3 of them are dead. Another example of this theory is if a character like Hajime is reminded once again of his relationship to Izuru Kamakura. But let's hope that this game stays happy instead of being a depressing mess like the past games. I have seen theories about how this game could be a killing game, like the past games, but I highly doubt it, since it would just be chaotic to have a killing game with so many characters, and it'll probably be strange for it to have that sort of setting, while also being a board game. That's why I think that they'll still have dark themes at some points, since, you know, it's Danganronpa, but not to the point of a mutual killing spree. The most death game-like I could see this game being is if it were kind of like the Your Turn to Die spin-off, Your Turn to Shine, where the characters get to spend time with each other while having a time limit, and if they don't collect enough resources, they'll die one by one. These kinds of theories really make me wonder whether or not this game does take place in the Neo World program, or if the students actually get to be on a real island. But if it were in the Neo World program, would characters like Monika and Junko be part of that? Now that we have some thoughts going around about the setting of the story, why don't we dissect the screenshots and scenes from the trailer to imagine what kind of interactions the characters will have with each other. Starting off with Komaru and Makoto's interaction in what looks like the front of Hope's Peak Academy. From what Komaru is saying, we can probably assume that she was walking around or going into Hope's Peak when Makoto suddenly started talking to her. This makes me wonder whether or not Komaru is going to be a part of Hope's Peak with the other students, or if she's just wandering around waiting for someone. One of the things I'm really looking forward to in this game is watching Komaru meet the other students of Hope's Peak and seeing her reactions, especially since in UDG she hardly got any chance to relax. Next up, we have Miu talking with Celeste on the beach from STR2, but it doesn't seem like they're having a very good mood, which is understandable since these two characters are not compatible in any way whatsoever. I could imagine their conversation going somewhere along the lines of Miu insulting Celeste about her outfit, and then Celeste being disgusted by Miu's vulgar language. Or maybe Celeste wanted to ask Miu to make something for her, but not listen to what Miu actually has to say about it. And I'm sure that no matter what Celeste wants, she will not bow down to Miu like Kaede. Overall, I think that this will be a really fun interaction due to how different these two characters are. Following that, we got to see our second UDG character, Hiroko Hagakure. Not to mention that it's also a different background. My guess to the scenario is that a group of students, or all of the students, are going on a road trip around the island with their chaperone, but then have to fight the monsters that we can see in later scenes. Not to mention that all the fighting scenes include a similar background, a road in the forest by the ocean. By the way, while we're on Mother Hagakure's part, I want to say that I'm really excited to see how she'll act around the students of Hope's Peak, not to mention that her son's going to be there. Unless the devs just completely threw Yasuhiro away. This makes me wonder what characters from Ultra Despair Girls are going to be present in this game. Will the Warriors of Hope be there? Will the dead people from the wanted list, like Chihiro's dad, be there? I mean, there's a whole character selection spot for UDG, so there must be a decent amount to choose from. So many questions. Anyway, moving on, we can see a scene that a lot of people, including myself, are very happy about, since it includes some very popular characters, who are Chiaki, Kokichi, and everyone's favorite, Monokuma. From the little context we're given from the screenshot, we can guess that Kokichi and Monokuma were arguing to the point of shouting, and Chiaki came to check what's going on. Personally, I like to imagine that maybe Kokichi was trying to figure out what's going on with this whole island trip and monsters by asking Monokuma. It would be really cool to be in Kokichi's point of view as he tries to figure everything out, since I'm sure that he'll suspect Monokuma and the island, just like what happened in V3. Speaking of character thoughts, since the setting is Jabberwock Island, if it really is the Neo World program, I wonder if Chiaki will still be an AI, or if they'll just gloss over that and not even touch on that possibility, just like in the Ultimate Talent Development Plan. Going back to the interaction that these three are having, I'd imagine that Monokuma would just complain about them being up and about late at night. And then once Chiaki comes, she'll defuse the situation, Kokichi might get frustrated for being interrupted, and they'll go back to sleep. Next, we have another interaction that I'm super excited about, which is Leon and Rantaro talking. Chapter 1 buddies! Both of these two are also wearing their beach outfits and are in what looks to be some sort of creek type area. Very pretty. Based on the dialogue from Leon, I guess that they're talking about Leon's dream of becoming a singer, and Rantaro may have mentioned how he can play an instrument. Although I don't think it's ever been mentioned that Rantaro can play an instrument. But I'd imagine that he can play something similar to a guitar pretty well, since those are used in duets a lot, and I feel like it'd suit him. Or, you know, maybe Rantaro can sing really well and he learned it from his siblings, or during one of his adventures around the world, since most cultures have their own songs and music. I like to think that it's both. The next interaction that I have to show comes from the Spike Chunsoft website, link in the description, and it includes Hiyoko, Himiko, and Mahiru. I like to imagine that Mahiru wants to take a photo of Hiyoko and Himiko together, because, you know, short adorable children. And then Hiyoko starts complaining and even insulting Himiko, which is why Himiko looks upset in the screenshot. But then Mahiru tells her that it'd be a nice photo and it'd be good to hang out with the students from different classes. So Hiyoko listens and they take a beautiful photo by the beach. Speaking of the beach, I love this background so much. I think that it's really pretty and happy. Not to mention that the sign says Kumaya, which basically means bear house. So it's a beach bear house. It wouldn't be Danganronpa without a bear pun. Finally, the last English scene that I have today includes Celeste and Sonia chatting at the beach. Although again, it is a different background near what I'm guessing is the mountains on Jabberwock Island. From the dialogue, I can predict that they're talking about how wonderful and perfect the weather is on Jabberwock Island, and maybe how Celeste wouldn't mind having her dream castle on an island similar to this one. Because Celeste mentioned that, maybe Sonia starts suggesting that she come to her homeland, Novoselic, to check out their beach. I feel like Celeste and Sonia would really get along, since one of them wants to live in a castle while the other one grew up in a castle. It just seems really wholesome. That's all I have for this video, but again, in later parts I will go into more detail and talk about the other things regarding Danganronpa S, like the CGs, the game parts, and even the difference between the Japanese version with more teaser screenshots. So please consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!